And hello, everyone. How are we tonight? Welcome, welcome. We have a very special guest, Mr. David Samson. David, how you doing tonight, my friend? Oh, hold on. There we go. Talk now. I'm so sorry.
You muted me.
I'm so sorry. I muted both of us and I forgot to hit you. How you doing?
God, people have tried for years to mute me. I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure having you on today. Absolutely fantastic. You were awesome to listen to during the lockout. And to me, I feel like a lot of people didn't really. I feel like you could have been. I feel like people could have listened more to you because obviously you have that insight. Obviously, you have that experience. Being the president of the Marlins before, so you have that knowledge of what goes on in the front office. And I feel like during the lockout, and we'll just kind of start there really quick, don't want to talk too long about it because I think everyone was over it 2 days into it, but um you felt like it was a pretty one-sided kind of a game in the public eye, especially towards the players. But I feel like towards the end, it kind of you felt the momentum sort of shifting a little bit towards the owners, like in the public eye. Just real quick, like I said, don't want to talk too long about it, but what were your overall thoughts like on the lockout? Do you feel like the players got a fair deal? How would, if you reflect on it, how would you reflect on the whole thing?
Well, I think the players were very clear what they wanted. They wanted younger players to get paid more money faster, and they wanted teams to start tanking because they thought that if too many teams tank, then there are not enough teams that can actually spend money on members of the union. And I think what you saw, the most interesting part of the entire lockout to me was the final player vote, where there are 8 members of something called an executive council. That's 8 players who really do the negotiating. And in order to get a collective bargaining agreement done, you need 23 owners out of 30 to vote yes. And then you need 20 out of 38 players. And that's 30 team reps, 1 rep from each team. And then the 8 members of the executive council all have a vote. So that's 38 total votes. And you need 20, which is a simple majority. Well, the final score was 26-12. 4 teams voted against it. But more importantly, 8 members. That's all 8. 100% of the executive council said, no, this deal is not good enough. And I thought that was fascinating. And from an ownership standpoint, it doesn't matter what the vote is. The fact is the deal got done. And from a player standpoint, the majority of the union, which has 1,200 actual members, the majority of the union is very much helped by this agreement.
Yeah, and it's funny because there was one writer out there in particular, Hall of Fame writer Bill Madden. He was really the only one out there who kind of was mentioning that maybe Scott Boras was being a bit of an issue during the entire process. It looked like they had a deal. We were here. I was live with everyone here in the chat. It was 2:30 in the morning, and don't even ask me how many times we've been this whole past week. We've been live till like 3 in the morning. I'm still recovering, but that morning in particular, they're at Roger Dean Stadium, and just it looked like they had a deal. And then all of a sudden, it was done. But as soon as I saw that they ended the conversation for the night, it makes you think that's why car dealerships they don't want you to leave because they want to get a deal done. And as soon as that happened, I'm like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right. But Bill Madden was saying that Scott Boras he basically just told him like, nope, get out of that room, leave. What were your thoughts on maybe Scott Boras being kind of an influence here?
Well, I talked about it on Nothing Personal throughout the 99-day lockout. Anyone who thinks that Scott Boras was not involved in this collective bargaining agreement negotiation, they just don't understand how it works. Scott Boras represents 5 of the 8 members of the executive council. Scott Boras cares only about his clients and only those clients at the top of the market. And he wanted the CBT to be much, much higher, meaning the level at which teams can spend to before being taxed. It's sort of like the salary cap tax. It's sort of like a salary cap, actually, except It's not called that. And we're already seeing it. The Yankees are over it. The Dodgers are over it. The Mets are over it. The Phillies are now over it. But they're spending just to that level and maybe a little bit over it. But then the Dodgers and the Mets are spending to the highest level, that new special, quote unquote, Steve Cohen tax. So I think Scott Boras was right in that the owners always have looked at the CBT as a salary cap, but just sort of soft. And the teams with lower revenue and lower payrolls didn't want those teams spending that much money, because the more payroll disparity you have, the less chance you have to compete.
Yeah, you were talking about the executive council. Like most of those players were represented by Scott Boras, and
5 of 8.
yeah. So in the end, just glad they got a deal done, and I'm very excited for some baseball to be coming back. What are your thoughts?
And
You
you're
know,
like
being
more right fans. You're like fans. You
yeah,
don't care, and I don't blame
yeah,
you, because I'm out of the game now. I've been out since 2017,
mhm,
and my view was, let's go. There's not
yeah,
enough here that's going to cause a delay in the season. There's a lot of PR that's going on. The owners were trying to get the best PR, then the players were trying to get the best PR. But the funny part is, when you're in the room negotiating, no one gives a crap about what the PR is. You're trying to do the best deal you can, and you're hoping the other side blinks. And the only reason the deal got done when it did is that was the last day a deal could get done and play 162 games. And the players wanted that, and the owners wanted that. So that was a real deadline. And that's why he didn't need to stay up till 3 a.m. all those nights, because the deal was not going to get done until that day.
yeah. And my overall reflections, of the whole thing before we move on, it did feel like a lot of it, especially from the public point of view, it did feel a little too emotional to me. It felt like players or fans, they like to gravitate towards the players, I feel like, but me, from day one, I always looked at it right from down the middle. I always, while all the the mainstream media, it felt very player heavy, which I'm all in support of the players, but it did feel like it was a little one sided. Um, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Let me ask you a question where you work. And you said you're a teacher, right?
Yes.
So even school systems are this way.
Hmm.
Everything is this way. And I love that you're a teacher. It's the most important job there is, in
Thank
my
you.
opinion, actually, in the entire country.
Thank you.
Every single employer, not just owners of sports teams, every employer, including your school district, they want to pay you the least amount of money possible to do the most amount of work.
Yeah.
Do you agree that that is what employers generally are trying to do?
Yeah. Definitely. And
They are
it's funny. Yeah. Yeah.
And they will replace, if you want more money, they will get someone to replace you who will not want more money.
Right.
And in baseball, what the players think is, there's no one to replace us,
Right.
because no one can be as good as I am at shortstop, let's say. We are
Yeah.
the best of the best.
Yeah.
Well, I would argue that if you look at the entire pool of teachers, I want the teachers to be the best of the best, but districts are still have a budget.
Yeah.
And there are still levels of pay for teachers at different grades, different experience. Then there's tenure, there's unions, right? There's all
Yeah.
sorts of things going on. That's every industry. But people think that sports is different. And I try to tell them nothing personal. It's just business, even in sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of people, they just think, all of these franchises, they have money for days, which, I mean, yeah, sure. Some of them do. I mean, they do, but then there's also those out there that don't. And that's where, you and your best friend, Jeff Passan, you guys had a nice little
Mm.
conversation on
I've
Twitter
never met him.
one day. Yeah.
He's never met me either.
Yeah. And I feel like, honestly, that would have been a great conversation to have, but I don't know. It seems like, maybe they have
He's
a
scared of
different,
me. He won't come on the air with me at all, because he knows that he doesn't have a shot.
right.
And people have tried. Levitard's tried. I've tried. It'd be great. First, I'd love to introduce myself so he can actually know me, having
Yeah.
crapped on me for my entire 18-year career running a Major League Baseball team. But he's never run anything in his life. And
Right.
it's funny. I mean, no one pays him any attention. That part didn't bother me, all that back and forth on Twitter,
Yeah.
because inside the game, literally no one pays him any attention.
Right, and he's great for the pass and bombs, the free agent signings, letting us know. But when it comes to that, like you said, I'm not tooting my horn, but I am a teacher. I see union stuff all the time. I see it in emails. Putting out statements from either side. Bashing the other side. It's like, I mean, I don't know, obviously, the inside details of Major League Baseball, but I have an understanding of how these negotiations work, and it was funny, kind of how similar it was, like just the back and forth, like where both sides are trying to just say something to bring the other side down, and I see it all the time in emails. It was pretty funny. Well, yes, it is different, but there was a lot of similarities there as well. So
I
But
just kept telling people it's totally normal. Don't
yeah,
ride the roller coaster up and down because you'll make
yeah,
yourself crazy. And
yeah,
that's what I tried to tell people on my show. And I tried to tell people at the grocery store when asked. I just said, just stop reading the back and forth. Oh, no, there's going to be a delay. Oh, my God, there's no season. Oh, the owners are terrible. Oh, the players are terrible. Just let the process happen. And it
right.
did. And now we get to play baseball.
Which is a great thing, and hoping my Red Sox can take one more step forward this coming year. So, but let's talk about baseball. Like, let's backtrack. What got you into the game of baseball? Back in the day as a kid, did you play as a kid, or were you just always a fan, or like kind of what got you into the game of baseball?
No, I was a Knicks fan. I wanted to be a point guard for the Knicks, and then I stopped growing and got cut by my freshman basketball team, which really was the first of many failures I had. Probably not the first. I failed well before ninth grade, but
Yeah.
that was devastating. No, I was working on Wall Street, having finished law school and run a business in Europe. I then was on Wall Street at a firm called Morgan Stanley, and I got a call from my stepfather, Jeffrey Loria, who asked me to help him buy the team.
Mm.
So I was part of Morgan Stanley. So I worked on the transaction and
Yeah.
got paid for him to buy the team as a transaction. And then he asked me to run the team for 30 days just as sort of a transition. And I agreed to do that if he paid me my daily rate, which is the
Mhm.
amount of money I was making at Morgan Stanley. And then 30 days just turned into another 30. And finally, I left Morgan Stanley and joined him full time. And we worked well together. We separated family and business. Whenever we would talk, we would start our conversation by saying, okay, this is business. Or if it were about holidays or something else, we'd say, all right, this is family. And then about 4 years in, he and my mother actually got divorced.
Mm.
And so after that, there was no more family talk. As I tell people, the only thing that changed is that we each had lawyers during my contract negotiations.
Yeah.
But I had run a business and he thought that I could do it. I was young, no doubt. He took a chance, but I proved over 18 years that I was able to do it. And I loved it because I enjoyed all the accomplishments, but I also enjoyed trying to make a difference in the community. I enjoyed the competition.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed just making things happen on and off the field. Didn't win as much as I would have liked, but we did win a World Series, which was great.
Yeah.
So overall, it was a really interesting, fun career. But I love what I'm doing now even more than baseball, actually.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the World Series in 2003, let's move on. So, like you said, you and your stepfather had purchased the Marlins.
Oh my God! Look at that!
I know. Look at this picture.
Oh,
This is
God.
amazing. So let's kind of get into that a little bit. What was the because you had the Expos before this, and then they were sold, and then you purchased the Marlins, I believe, it was from John Henry. What was the motivation behind like the purchase of the Marlins? Was that a market that you had always wanted to get into, or
Not at all.
yeah?
No. That was actually a franchise swap that occurred in 2002. So you have to go back. Let's go all the way back to 1999 for this story, because the Expos were owned by a bunch of local Canadians. And there was someone named Claude Brochu, who was the general partner, who owned a small share of the Expos team, but was the general partner. He was the guy in charge. And he wanted to sell because the Expos were not doing well in Montreal.
Right.
The strike in 94, 95 really hurt them. They had no revenue. And Bud Selig was hoping, the commissioner of baseball at the time, was hoping somebody in Montreal would step up and buy the team and get a stadium built, and that the Expos would be able to be a functioning franchise because they had not been really functioning since after the strike. So Jeffrey Loria had made Bud aware for years that he wanted to buy a team. And I was not involved in any of those. I was going through law school and doing the stuff that I was doing. And it became clear to him that these Expos could be bought. So he went to see Bud Selig, and Bud said, listen, I'll give you an opportunity here, but I'm going to see if we can get local ownership. And no one stepped up locally. So Jeffrey negotiated, and that's the deal that I put together. And he bought part of the Expos. And then contraction happened. Contraction was part of a collective bargaining negotiation back then. And there was a thought that the Twins and the Expos were going to be contracted. The Twins, by the way, were owned by the richest owner at the time, a guy named Carl Pohlad. So for all the people who say that you have to have a rich owner in order to compete, to have a high payroll, the richest owner in baseball owned the Minnesota Twins. They had a low payroll, a terrible stadium, and they were going to
Mhm.
be contracted. And so then it turns out that John Henry owned the Marlins and could not get a deal done to get a ballpark in Florida. And
Mhm.
he wanted to leave Florida. He wanted to sell. So Bud had to find a buyer for Florida. So Bud looked for someone local in Florida, a Miamian, to buy the Marlins, but nobody wanted the team.
Mhm.
Nobody, because they played where the Dolphins play. They had no revenue. They were losing money. Jeffrey said, I want to stay in the game. So I said, how about we trade? So I went to see Bob Dupay, the president of baseball, and I said, how about a franchise swap? And we then worked for several months, and John Henry bought the Red Sox,
Mhm.
Jeffrey bought the Marlins, and baseball bought the Expos and moved them to Washington.
Yeah.
And all three franchises have won a World Series since then, Boston
Yeah.
multiple.
Yeah.
And it was a fascinating exchange. And that's how we got to Florida. And that's how we got to Montreal, because nobody local wanted either of those teams. And they
Mhm.
could have had them for pennies on the dollar, by the way.
Yeah. So let's get into that Marlins team where you shortly after winning a World Series, you guys, I believe it was one season, I think 2002, and then or sorry, not 2002, 2003. You really started adding some players. You added guys like Ivan Rodriguez, Jeff Conine. You had Juan Pierre, Uge Turbina. You also called up Dontrelle Willis, Miguel Cabrera.
We traded for Dontrelle Willis.
Oh, that was a trade.
Yeah, we traded for Dontrelle, and we called them up. We traded for him into the first trade we ever did, Dontrelle Willis. And anybody on the Marlins front office back in 2002, if you ever interview any of them, and they say, oh, man, we wanted Dontrelle Willis. We knew he was going to be a star. Guess what? Dontrelle Willis was a throw-in. None of us knew he was going to be a star. The reason we took him as part of that trade, we traded them Alfonseca and Clement, and we got back Julian Tavares to start for us that year.
Yeah.
And Dontrelle Willis, we just wanted a third piece because we were trading our closer, having just walked into a new city, but we knew we had to cut payroll. So Dontrelle Willis, we said, oh, he's a lefty. Let's take him. And so then he did well in the minor leagues, and then we called him up, and obviously the rest is history and how great he was. We also traded for Juan Encarnacion. So we really, one of the things that makes me slightly defensive, but I don't need to be, because what's the difference? I've got the ring and the history on my side, but that was not a Dombrowski team. You know, we made a lot of changes to get that World Series, and it was fun. The only downside is that I spent the rest of my career chasing the second one, and I realized it's pretty damn hard to win.
Yeah. I mean, luckily, for my Red Sox, they've been able to somehow figure it out over the years.
They've been great. Do you realize, as a Red Sox fan, do you like John Henry as an owner?
I feel like there's been times where there's just been a lot of ups and downs where, we would win a World Series and then we were just horrible the next year. I would say the entire experience has been fine. There have just been some moments where it seemed like they were more worried about public relations at times instead of, trying to win at
How
times.
many World Series have they won since 2004?
Jesus, it's 4, right? It's
4.
Yeah.
And you're saying, so in 4 World Series in 18 years, do you know that since 1997, the Red Sox, the Giants, the Yankees, the Cardinals, and the Marlins, there are 5 fan bases who have 2 World Series or more since 1997.
Yeah.
And when people say something about John Henry, or people say Jeffrey Lurie, the worst owner ever, well, do you know how many fan bases would trade to have 1 World Series, whether it was 2003 or 2016 with the Cubs or 2019? It's hard to win. John Henry's gotten you 4 of them. I would think he'd be the greatest owner in your life that he's done that.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I have totally been on the record, and trust me, like I see, the fun people on Twitter, saying, "Oh, what is up with John Henry and this ownership group? They care more about Liverpool." And like there have been times where there were some. I believe Carl Crawford was more of an ownership-driven kind of a move. I believe I could be wrong on that, but there were some moves where it seemed like ownership were getting involved. Where I wish at times like they would have just let the front office, do more of that.
All 30, my friend. All 30 owners get involved.
I
Don't
know,
believe
but
the hype that, oh, Jeffrey was a meddler. Oh, John Henry's a meddler.
yeah,
I've been to owners' meetings. I know them all.
yeah,
All 30 owners get involved. No matter
oh yeah.
what their PR is, they all meddle.
Yeah, you know, I obviously like can't say anything about John Henry, and it's not even just the winning. You know, it's everything else they've been able to accomplish. You know, renovating Fenway Park over the years. You know, they've really done a lot of good. You know, yeah, sure, maybe there's a little nitpicks here and there, but overall, I mean, I don't see why anyone would have any kind of an issue with the ownership of the Red Sox, but they've figured it out over the years. I mean, sure, yeah, those down years were being Red Sox fans, obviously we expect greatness every single year, but so those down years were, they were down, but the good were amazing. So
There's 29 fan base. By the way, every Yankee fan would trade with you.
oh yeah,
They won't admit it, of course, publicly on Twitter, in a chat room, none of them. But
Yep.
every single one. The Yankees have won one World Series since 2000, in
Yep.
2009.
Well, let's
Now
talk
it's-
about those Yankees.
Yeah.
Let's move on. So, like I said, we were talking about the Marlins in 2003. That was a really good team in 2003. You know, I've talked with the viewers on my channel. 2003 was when in late 90s. I was a kid. I was more focused on playing sports and being with my friends and whatnot. I knew about Pedro Martinez, Nomar. Like, yeah, I followed those guys. But 2003 was really the year where I really just dove in, where, I was at home. I'd kept track of the Red Sox that year. I knew they were in the playoffs, and I was at home Saturday night, and all of a sudden, game 3, Red Sox are down 2-0 to the A's. Trot Nixon hits a walk-off home run, and ever since then, I've checked every box score every single night. And so 2003, obviously a special year for you. It was for me too. But obviously that Yankee team was a very good team that year. What were your thoughts going into that World Series? I mean, obviously you were confident you're in a World Series, but what was
we had the best record in baseball after May 15th that year. So it's not that we came out of nowhere. So
no.
We were actually on the team bus.
Right.
Because I'll tell you exactly where I was game 7 of the 2003 ALCS. We were on the team bus waiting outside the plane because we couldn't get on the plane because there had been no flight plan filed because we didn't know whether we were flying from Chicago to Boston or Chicago to New York for game 1 of the World Series. And we were flying out on Sunday. I mean, what was game 1? Was it Tuesday, let's say, or a Wednesday? I can't remember. Let's say it was Tuesday the 18th. I'd have to go back, but it was a Sunday when it was game 7, and we're sitting there and we're just hoping for somebody to win the game. And then Aaron Boone hits the walk-off, and we start getting off the plane. They file the flight plan, and we're checking into the New York hotel, 2.5 hours later. Yeah. And we felt really good about it. We walked into Yankee Stadium before game 1. We had Brad Penny going game 1. Yeah. And my recollection is we scored right in the top of the first inning. Yeah. When Pierre got on, then Castillo got him over, and then Pudge hit a sacrifice fly maybe to take a 1-0 lead against David Wells. But we knew that we had a better team, and we just felt like we were destined, especially after that Cubs series where we had been down 3-1.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember in those playoffs, it felt like the Marlins were being betted against, even though they had very similar to the 2019 Nationals, like 19-31, I believe, in May or June or whatever it was, but very similar teams. But I felt like that Marlins team was really being counted against a lot. My Red Sox, I'm sorry to bring up a bad memory, we destroyed the Marlins, I believe, at Fenway Park. I think we
June of 2003.
I don't remember the final score.
So again, it's funny how people think I love that. Yes, you did. I want to say the score was 25-2, and we had 3 pitchers: Michael Tejera, Tommy Phelps, and Carl Pavano. Maybe couldn't get out of the first inning, as I recall.
Yeah.
And I think Phelps got hit in the face and went to the hospital on a hit by pitch. But the next day, Lowell hit a home run so you guys blew a save, and we won that game. So we split 2 games.
Right.
And that has always been part of my philosophy running a team. It never mattered to me when we lost 25-4 or 5-4. They were all the same to me. Yeah. Because in baseball, you play every day, and the best players and the best presidents and GMs are the ones with the shortest memories.
Mhm.
because you've got to bounce back
Yeah.
quickly and you've got to forget about the game before. I, of
Yeah.
course, remember that game, and I remember it not being a thing.
Yeah. Well, besides winning the World Series, what do you have any memories of that season that really, stick out to you? Is there anything, in particular that you remember about that whole season or that playoff run that you kind of just think back to sometimes?
Well, I remember that people view Steve Bartman as the reason why we beat the Cubs, which always makes me laugh. The biggest play of that was the Cubs shortstop making an error
Oh
in
yeah.
that eighth
Oh,
inning,
that was
Alex
brutal.
Gonzalez.
Yeah.
We're not even in that series. If the Gold Glove right fielder for the San Francisco Giants, who's, God, I wish Coco were here, who could help me with my memory. I want to say his name was Juan Cruz. Maybe the right fielder for the Giants in 03 was a Gold Glove right fielder. He dropped a pop-up to right
Oh, yeah.
field
Okay.
when Conine was at the plate, and
Yeah.
Conine ends up scoring, and we win that game.
Mm.
So there's so many things that have to go right in the playoffs. Moises Alou not catching that ball, which he couldn't have caught anyway,
Mhm.
wasn't as important as Alex Gonzalez's error on the double play. I
Mhm.
remember also in Yankee Stadium, I remember when David Wells started a game somewhere deep in the World Series and got hurt immediately and had to go under an inning. And I remember thinking, God, the Yankees are in trouble because
Mhm.
we have a better team and we could win. And we did, and it was fun.
Yeah. Well, I remember even in, game 7, we got to Clemens and everything. And, and unfortunately, Pedro stuck with him a little too long. And, who knows? Who knows if it could have ended up being a Red Sox Marlins World Series? It could have been fun. But hey, the Red Sox and the Marlins, they are more connected than people might think. Thank you for Josh Beckett and Mike Lowell, two of my favorite players of all time. But let's get into
Do you know
that. That's
Lowell was
kind
a
of
throw-in? We
yeah.
made them take Lowell because we needed them to take the money. They only wanted Beckett.
Right.
And we wanted back Hanley Ramirez and Anibal Sanchez.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we were looking for a deal to get Hanley because
Yeah.
we knew we had to move money.
Yeah.
And we had increased the payroll trying to repeat in both 04 and 05.
Mm-hmm.
And our pitching was getting older and more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And we just didn't win in 05, which is the second worst season of all my 18 years in terms of expectations. But we finished that deal on Thanksgiving.
Yes.
With Larry Lucchino.
Yes.
And we made them take Lowell because he had signed like a $30 million deal. He was making like $8 million a year, something like that.
Didn't have a good season in
and the
05.
Red Sox were despondent, but they wanted Beckett and they had the money to do it. And so they did that deal. And we were wrong on Lowell because he obviously still had stuff left in the tank. And when I see Mike now, he'll always thank me because he got another ring and got another chapter in his amazing career. And Josh and I like to talk about his time in Boston. He got another ring. Yeah. And you don't realize how hard it is to get that other ring. Miguel Cabrera has been trying to get another ring forever and never did. And it's hard to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, with Beckett was someone I felt like we really needed. He had a tough first season with the Red Sox. It took him a season to really get it going. But I was actually I was a little more optimistic about Mike Lowell because I was like, yeah, you know what? Hey, right-handed bat, maybe he can take advantage of the monster. And he did really well in that park. It was really great. And I always knew the glove was, going to be a sure thing with him. So I was more optimistic than others. But to me, I feel like Beckett was a game changer because, Pedro leaving, they didn't have that guy. And Beckett was really, he was awesome. And
he was the number one, right? He was he took the ball. Now he did funny stuff off the field. And I think that, if you look at longevity, I think that may have played a part in not having he should be a Hall of Famer. But the world of sports, and especially baseball, is littered with would be Hall of Famers, either who aren't because of injury or they just don't have the bulk in their career because they didn't take care of themselves off the field, whatever the case may be, which just shows you how hard it is to be a Hall of Famer.
Oh yeah, and one guy who maybe could end up in the Hall of Fame was John Lester. How hard did you guys push for Lester in that deal? Like, were you close to maybe not making a deal, or because what went on with that?
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of leverage.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of players we tried to get over the years. Lester's one of them. We tried to get Will Middlebrooks. He was untouchable.
Yeah.
The Red Sox we were willing to offer anything to get Middlebrooks, and they would not move him at all. We tried to get back in the day, Alfredo Amezaga from the Angels, who we ended up getting because he ended up
Wow.
being a utility guy. He was
Yeah.
untouchable for a number of years.
Yeah.
It's funny how many untouchable players they are who end up not being what teams think they're going to be, because it's just hard in baseball. Much easier, I think, in basketball to know when a superstar is going to be a superstar. Although maybe I could argue Zion Williamson is not a superstar, and
Right.
it's actually harder than you think. But
Mhm.
it's funny to look back on trades that you tried to make that you couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of all the trades, that was kind of the first fire sale. That's what they always like to call it under your watch. A lot of guys, ended up leaving. I really love that Carlos Delgado signing, and then traded away. It's Paulo Duca, Luis Castillo, Juan Pierre, Beckett, and Lowe, like we talked about. As an organization, like you said, some of these pitchers are getting older. Players are getting older, more expensive. Did that come as a surprise, because it felt like 04, 05, you guys had some really good teams, and just didn't live up to it.
Yeah, we were the Oakland A's, right? Meaning that we had a good team, but we couldn't get a ballpark done. So
Right.
we rode that team through the end of its window. And then when there was no ballpark, we had to lower the payroll like the Oakland A's are doing today. Here we are literally 17 years later, and you're seeing a team do that. That was us in 2005. Obviously, when we signed Delgado, we expected that we were going to have a stadium deal done.
Yeah.
That was that plan.
I
And
love
then
that signing.
there was a vote. Yeah, we signed Al Leiter that year. We got Delgado. We had a
Mhm.
team that should have won, damn it. But the fact is that when we got voted down and couldn't get a deal approved, we knew we had to trade them. And so we started over with the Hanley Ramirez, Dan Ugla group, and that had a good run. And then we had to we kept that run going through 12, basically, when we got a new stadium. And obviously after 2012, we had to do another retooling.
Yeah. And then obviously, shortly after that, trading away Miguel Cabrera, Dontrelle Willis. Obviously it was a move you had to make, but as being the former president of the Marlins, did that hurt? Like, was that stung?
You mean trading away a first ballot Hall of Famer
Yeah.
who you grew up with and won a World Series with and watched him from when he was a kid and wanted him to retire a Marlin? Did that hurt? Yeah. But I said to the press at the time, I said to the owner at the time, I said, we have two choices. We can keep Miguel and then not have any money to put into a new ballpark, or trade Miguel and then get a new ballpark, save the franchise, and there'll be the next player. Yeah. And there were next players, but Miguel obviously is a generational talent.
Yeah.
But we got back at the time 2 of the top 5 prospects in baseball.
Yeah.
They were ranked in 2 of the top 5. Detroit had them, in Cameron Maybin and Andrew Miller, who had long major league careers, but obviously never became superstars. But they were 2 of the top 5. And the fact that the Tigers took Dontrelle Willis, we were okay with that. But losing
were there any like really serious talks about, like, were you at all close to any kind of an extension with Miguel, or
no? No way, because when we took over the Marlins in 2002, the thought is we'd have a new ballpark open in 2006. I thought the deal would get done and construction would start in 2004 and open in 2006, latest 2007.
Yeah.
And it was delayed till 12.
Yeah.
So that's an entire generation of players, right? That's an entire rebuild, then watch them play and then trade them away. So it's an entire cycle.
Yeah. We had heard about Miguel Cabrera that, before he went to the Tigers, the Angels were really getting involved. How close was that trade for the Angels? There's always stuff out there saying, like, yeah, it was pretty close, but was it really close? Like, how was that?
Once Dombrowski with the Tigers included both Maybin and Miller, no one was close to that.
Yeah. Did any other teams try jumping in? Like,
every
second,
team.
Do you remember?
We had talks. We had talks with 29 teams.
No. Yeah.
29 teams were in on Miguel Cabrera.
Do you remember any teams that were like a realistic, like, oh, maybe this could be something?
Oh, we had 4 or 5 different trades on the board that we knew we were moving them because we knew that this was the best time to maximize his value. Listen, it's not pleasant, but here's the fact. And this goes on in every front office. Players are looked at as assets, and you have to try to maximize your assets.
Yeah.
And so that's why you see teams trading players when they've got 2 years left before free agency versus 1 year left.
Yeah.
Sometimes you keep a player all the way through free agency just to get a draft pick, but that's not maximizing your asset. And we knew the Marlins, we had no choice but to build for the future. And he was the best asset we had.
Yeah.
So we knew that had to trade him. So we were looking for the best package with the youngest players with the biggest upside.
Yeah.
And that's what we got back.
Yeah.
And it obviously didn't. I mean, listen, not only did it not work, but it was a disaster.
Yeah.
But if we had to do it again, of course we would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
But we can't, you can't look at it that way. You take the information you have at the time, you make a decision, and name me one front office who's gotten everything right. I can't. Certainly
was
not
there
me.
was there a trade? I know, yes, at the time, obviously that was the best move to make at the time. In hindsight, was there a move that was there that could have ended up based off of how maybe some of these players performed that were being offered? Was there a hindsight move that could have been maybe a better one?
So no, and here's why. So when you sell a stock, there's two types of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at the stock every day from then on, and when it goes up, you drive yourself crazy, and when it goes down, you celebrate. Yeah, that's not the way we ran the team. Yeah. When you move on from a player, you move on. So we don't comb box scores, and most GMs and presidents don't. You don't comb box scores looking to see how the player is who you traded away. You don't look to see what happens with the prospects you couldn't get, whether or not they made it, because you're too busy moving on to what's real. Right. Because it's not fantasy baseball, right? You can't just rebuild your team and then make trades and try to maximize points or whatever fantasy is. So no, I never looked back, so I can't answer that for you. I just tried to look forward. But do I think about that trade? You're damn right I do.
Yeah. And obviously, he's gone on to be a great player. Would have been cool. Who knows? Maybe, maybe something would have been different if he stayed. But obviously, it was the right move to make. But fast forward a little bit. Let's go to 2012, new ballpark. I remember as a Red Sox fan, I went to that was still when interleague play. It wasn't intertwined throughout the whole season. There was like that set month. 2006. Me and my dad. I was how old was I? I was just turned 16. Didn't have my license yet. Had my permit, drove to Miami. He let me drive the whole way. And I remember sitting, watching the Red Sox and the Marlins, 2006, June or July. I can't remember the month. It was hot. Like, I remember sitting there. I'm like, man, whatever. I'm glad I'm watching my Red Sox, but wow, it is hot. But that was obviously, one of the big reasons for getting a new ballpark. And there was a little bit of controversy with the ballpark. There was a lawsuit there. It got, held back a year. Looking back at the ballpark and just everything that went into it, was there anything looking back in hindsight where maybe you could have done something different, or I don't know, like what we're looking back on that whole process? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a tough process where it's hard to come out the other side without a little bit of without some scratches. Yeah. And it's tough because the public has a view of public financing of stadiums, and I get it. I really do. But I also understand what the government's role is. And the government's role is to invest in companies, whether it's through tax breaks of companies you don't know about. Everybody's community, including yours, wherever you live, your government is helping rich people get richer through tax breaks and through other things that keep companies doing business in your city. That's just the reality. And for me, it was always very clear that we wanted to be in Miami, but we needed to get a ballpark so we could keep the revenue from the stadium and not the Dolphins, so we could have a roof and not have the heat and the rain. So it was a matter of figuring out how to put a deal together in the best possible way. Yeah. So we negotiated with professional negotiators, and we got a deal. Yeah. I was in charge of getting that deal, and I knew that it would make me unpopular. If you look at all of the presidents who have gotten stadiums done in different places, they rarely survive it. Yeah. And the reason they don't survive it is because it's not a popularity contest. I worked for the owner. I didn't work for the people of Miami. And it sounds so harsh to say, but it's just true. Right. I worked for the owner. Yeah. That was my job, to get a ballpark done, to increase the value of the asset and win games. Yeah. In that order. Mm-hmm. And so I did it. Looking back, could I have been more empathetic from a PR standpoint? Could I have been better in terms of the way we threatened relocation and used Las Vegas and San Antonio and Portland and used them in order to get a better deal in Miami? Do I regret that? It's not very nice what I did, but am I the only one who threatens relocation to get a stadium deal done? You have to get.
Yeah, look at the A's now.
Like I invented that.
Yeah.
Come on. I just paid attention to the playbook, man. I just looked at my wrist and called the plays.
Yeah.
And so do I look back and say, man, I wish that people would have a different view of the building. I wish that more people would go to Marlins games. I wish that the team would have won more. I wish that our strategy would have worked.
Hold on, getting a little bit of lag. Are you still there?
I'm
okay,
there.
yeah, we're good now. Sorry, I had a little bit of lag.
I wish that my strategy would have worked. I had a strategy to raise the payroll in 2012, make tons of signings, hoping that team would win and that we would be able to draw people. But I'll tell you, it was your team that really made me realize we were screwed. Your team. And I don't know if you can hear me, but my Wi-Fi is good as yours.
Yeah. It's
right.
It looks like it's settling now. We're good.
So when the schedule came out in 2012, we had the Red Sox for an interleague series in the new ballpark. And we budgeted that to be a sellout within 10 days of the schedule announcement and the tickets being on sale. When 10 days passed and there were only 17,000 tickets sold, I said to myself, what's going on here? This is the Red Sox. How is this not a sellout?
Yeah, I remember that series too.
That's when I realized, wow, we may have a problem with attendance, which I never thought we'd have. And then on top of that, the team didn't win.
Right.
And that led to what happened after 2012. But then we built it up. We closed that window, built it up with Stanton and Yelich and Ozuna and Jose. And we couldn't get that team to win. And that's when Jeffrey Loria decided to sell the team.
Right. Well, let's talk, since we brought that up, that is another fire sale where 2012, a lot of good players you guys had. We had Jose Reyes, Mark Burley, Hanley Ramirez, Anibal Sanchez, Josh Johnson, who was on top of his game that year. Obviously that was a rough time. It was a rough time because it was not just getting rid of everyone, it was how quick just everything, because it felt like the Marlins were all in, and then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, what the heck just happened here? Like,
I'll tell you a little secret about that, just so you know. That trade got held up by Commissioner Selig.
Oh, yeah. Oh, did it?
And the reason it got held up after it was announced, there were three things that happened after that trade leaked. Number one, Henderson Alvarez, who we got back from the Blue Jays, was injured. Number two, Josh Johnson was injured. The Blue Jays failed Josh Johnson. The Marlins failed Henderson Alvarez. And that trade was going to go away.
Oh, wow.
The Blue Jays needed and wanted to make that trade so badly, and it got delayed to be approved by Bud Selig because he called Rogers, the owners of the Blue Jays, and said, why are you making that trade? You are taking on way too much money for players who are not going to help you win.
Oh, wow.
And so that trade was bad for everybody because the Blue Jays took all the money and didn't win. We traded everyone and got absolutely crushed.
Yeah.
But from a baseball standpoint, we won that trade by a mile, if you look at it from a baseball standpoint. But from a PR standpoint, and I remember making the trade, and it was crushing. Trading Mark Burley, I rarely called a player directly to say that player had been traded. And I called Mark to tell him, and I remember that call like it was yesterday. And it was absolutely, I was so despondent because when we signed those guys, it's such a wrong characterization. We didn't sign them to trade them. Now, Heath Bell sucked. I would have traded Heath Bell in a heartbeat. But
he was good that year before, and then I don't know what the heck happened.
He was so good on San Diego. He was unhittable. As a free agent, when we got him, he was unhittable in San Diego.
Yeah.
And in 2011. But we got another guy from San Diego, Fernando Rodney, who was unhittable for San Diego and then sucked for us. But anyway, I digress. But when we signed those guys, we wanted them there the whole time. We wanted to win a World Series. We had what we thought was a great team, and it fell apart. And it is to this day, I think about it. I have it right here, and the studio where I film Nothing Personal, I have a signed ticket from opening day of all the Cardinals players and Marlins players.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, I'm saddened to think about it.
Well, looking back at all those trades, obviously we had Hanley go to the Dodgers, Anibal Sanchez went to the Tigers, who ended up helping out with the Tigers quite a bit, actually. Were anything juicy that you remember back from them? Were any players that maybe could have gone elsewhere at that time? Was anything close, or was everything pretty lined up the way it went?
We had a GM, believe it or not, the guy we dealt with, now you're testing my memory, but I am 99% sure that the guy we dealt with in Toronto is the current GM of the Braves.
Oh, Anthopoulos?
And Anthopoulos, Alex Anthopoulos.
I'd
have to go back and look, but I think that's right. And he was into big moves. He always was. And he wanted all the guys. He wanted every one of them because he felt pressured to compete immediately. So we really didn't have talks with any other deal. And he was willing to make a one-stop shopping. We knew that it would be ripping off the Band-Aid in a way that was going to really leave a mark. And it left a serious mark. But it ended up being the deal that happened.
And in that one big deal, I've seen this on your show. There was one player in particular that you got back, Justin Nicolino. That could have been someone else. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So sometimes when you do trades, you offer a team a choice. So you'll trade one guy for one guy, or you trade two guys and say, here's a list of 4 players, pick any 2 you want. The Blue Jays let us choose between Noah Syndergaard and Justin Nicolino, and we chose Justin Nicolino. God, are we idiots? But here's why. Justin Nicolino was closer to the big leagues than a lefty, and Noah Syndergaard had a plus fastball, but his breaking stuff was not there yet, and he was going to take a bit of time to develop, and we needed people to help us quickly, and we'd always go lefty over righty no matter what. But Nicolino just could not put it together. But listen, I'll be the first to tell you, we made a million mistakes on trades, but there's 30 GMs, all of whom have the same story I have. Everybody's missed on someone. For Christ's sakes, David Ortiz was non-tendered by the Twins.
Yeah.
Right? One of your guys. So, I mean, there's a million stories. Every player has every owner, president, and GM has a story of a player that they just got it wrong.
Yeah, and hindsight is just it's that fun. But let's fast forward a little bit more. So let's get a little juicier here. September 2017, Bruce Sherman, Derek Jeter, and their group purchased the Marlins $1.2 billion. Shortly after you were relieved of your duties as president, when Sherman and Jeter were coming aboard, what were you thinking? Were you thinking you could be here for years to come, or was the writing on the wall? What was your thought process during that time?
So when Jeffrey walked in my office and said, "Go sell the team, I've had enough," after Jose died, my job was to sell the team, and I was negotiating the end of my career in baseball, and I knew that. But my job was to get him the most money he could get from whoever it was. So I went out and led the process. I didn't hire any bankers. I did it all myself. I got people bidding against each other, bidding against themselves. And when I got Jeter on the hook, it was great because I knew that they were going to overpay for the team. And I let Jeter kept saying throughout the process, "Oh, we want you to stay. We need your institutional knowledge. You're going to be so helpful." And he was just trying to make sure I didn't sell it to anybody else. But I didn't believe him, right? It didn't matter what he told me. I didn't pay attention to any of it. He had us come to Tampa to meet his wife, Hannah. Like that mattered to me, or see his beautiful house where Tom Brady rented when he moved to Tampa. Like that mattered to me. None of that mattered. I had been in the game 18 years, had won a World Series, built a ballpark, had an all-star game. I was done, and I knew I was done, and I was happy to be done. And so basically the only thing that concerned me about Sherman and Jeter was not my career. It was whether or not they'd actually sign the papers and actually wire the money. Because I needed to make sure that they realized only after the fact that they overpaid. Because if they were realizing it before the fact, they could have come back to renegotiate. And I wanted to get the most I could for Jeffrey. And so I did.
And speaking of big money, Giancarlo Stanton, big contract, ended up getting traded shortly after. And actually, I don't know if you've ever dabbled on this website at all. Let me see. I gotta share my screen really quick. Baseballtradevalues.com. I've used it a lot. They use algorithms very similar. It's not going to be dead on, but they have a 95% acceptance rate on real life trades, where the creator of the website has actually talked with people that work in front offices, and he's actually put this together. Before I show you this trade, do you feel like you won the show? I mean, I guess there's always
I
different
didn't make that
philosophies,
trade.
but huh?
That wasn't me.
Or the Marlins. Sorry, do you feel like the Marlins won that trade, or do you feel like they lost that trade?
Oh, I can tell you 100% certainty the Marlins won that trade. It's not even
if
close.
we actually, let me go
and I'll explain why. I don't know
here.
what your website will say, but I can explain why.
So yeah, let me go here. Share.
Come on, Matt. Just because of my deep voice? Is that why?
But here is
I cannot
trade.
read that.
So if we go down here,
by the way, I'm old.
They show here the return that got back for Stanton. So the Yankees, they got negative $135 million back, but the Marlins actually got $11.6 million back in the trade. So the Marlins, as of right now, are winning that trade by a mile. So
they were winning it by a mile the minute it was done.
Yeah.
So I couldn't read what you put up there, so I can't comment on that. And I would not want to comment on it. So I don't know what criteria it was. I don't know the analysis. I don't know any of it. But I can only tell you that that's not true, Robert. I've lost so many trades. I didn't do the Giancarlo trade. I got to stop looking at the comments. It's too funny.
Yeah.
So the answer is that the reason why the Marlins won that trade, and it was done by the new owners, is they had to move the money off the books because the payroll was not going to be high enough to have Giancarlo. They had to do the full rebuild, which is why they traded Yelich and Realmuto and Ozuna and Stanton. And they got the pitching staff they have now, which is a great young staff. And now they're starting to sign free agents, like they signed Soler and they signed Garcia, hoping that they can now hit and match that with their pitching. So now they're trying to be in a window of contention before those young pitchers get expensive. So the Marlins are acting the way we did. The new owners are acting the way we did. You hope the window stays open as long as possible. You try to hit while the window's open, and then when it closes, you move on to the next group of people and rebuild. So that is why Stanton got moved and why the Yankees lost that trade to the Marlins.
Yeah, and the other one with Christian Yelich, that's actually one I really wish they would have held on to him because, man, he was on a cheap contract and it was a very friendly contract. And that one on this website, again, baseballtradevalues.com. If I show everyone in the chat the breakdown, the Marlins
is going to be
clearly
very, very Brewer heavy.
Yeah, the Marlins clearly lost this trade. So just showing everyone at home, taking a look here, Christian Yelich, the surplus value that he delivered for the Brewers, $107.2 million. And the Marlins got back a package worth negative $44.9 million. So that was one
a trade. Just here's what happened with that trade. Having spoken to Mike Hill about it, Derek just got emotional. He went into the clubhouse and asked who wanted to be a part of the rebuild. And Yelich said, I don't want to be here anymore. And Jeter said, if you don't want to be here, I don't want you here. And so he traded Yelich. There was no reason to pay him. He could have fit in the payroll.
Yeah.
And at the time, Jeter didn't care who they got back, and they thought they got a good package. They thought they got a Tigers-like package, right? Because Brinson was supposed to be good. Monte Harrison was supposed to be good. Yamamoto should have been a serviceable starter. Isan Diaz was a utility guy, but the high-end guys were Harrison and Brinson, and they just got it wrong. But they, that's a trade that they look back on, and I assume that they are very disappointed in. But that's part of, again, every team has made trades that they're disappointed in.
Right. And like you said, we were talking about Derek Jeter here, making the news this past offseason, stepping down from the Marlins.
He didn't step down.
Or did he
got
resign?
fired.
Oh, he got fired.
He's spinning it well, isn't he? That you all believe that he stepped down.
Ooh, please,
Who steps down on February? Who steps down on February 28th?
Yeah.
What kind of person steps down on February 28th, the day that a new agreement is supposed to happen, 2 weeks before a season is supposed to start? I'm just curious. Right?
It was weird timing. It was also like a lot of people were also looking at it. People were praising him, like, "Oh, good for him." The owners, they're not treating the players right during this lockout. He's standing up for the players. He's quitting. I'm like, what?
That's not accurate.
What? That can't be. That's the farthest from the truth. But looking at that, what you went through there, I've listened to you on your show too, and you show a lot of respect towards the whole thing. But what were your just overall thoughts on that whole process?
Listen, it's hard. Running a team is hard. He was a Hall of Fame shortstop. It doesn't make him a Hall of Fame business guy. Yeah. And I know more about business than he does about business. Yeah. And I failed, right? I couldn't get a naming rights deal. And his naming rights deal that he got was not as high as he had told his bosses it would be. Yeah. He couldn't get a TV deal, that rights deal. It was as high as he told his boss it was going to be. Mm-hmm. Attendance didn't happen for him the way he told his bosses it would, like it didn't with me too. And therefore, the payroll didn't go up in the way that he thought it would. All the owners of the Marlins, Bruce Sherman's just one of them, had to pour money into that franchise for way longer than they thought. This is their 5th year owning the team. They've lost money the first 4, and they needed someone else to step in. And so it wasn't working. And Jeter signed a 5-year deal to start with. This was his 5th year, and it would have been his final year. But they wanted to be done with him and get someone else in there, because they need to try to get that business to work the way Wayne Huizenga tried, and John Henry and me and Jeffrey Loria and now Derek Jeter. We've all tried, and it's hard down there. It just is.
So let's move into that. We're getting towards the end here. So, like you're saying, you've had a hard time really reaching the fans of Miami. I mean, even after you left, their attendance actually was worse. It's been actually, I think minus 2020, it was the worst last year, and that was in Florida where there weren't really any restrictions at all. And 2019, they had, I believe, the worst as well. Looking back, like I know you said, you're happy now, you're doing your thing. Obviously, you're doing great, but looking back, looking at the Marlins, what do you think is, the right move? You've had a long time to reflect about this, and what do you think they need to do? Do you think do they need to move, or do they what do they need to do?
They can't. They're going to be there for another 30 years, or 20. It was a 38-year lease starting in 2012. Yeah. So this is now year 11, the 11th season. So there's 27 seasons left, and there's no relocating that team. No chance. So the only thing that hasn't happened in that new ballpark yet is winning.
Yeah.
So I think that we always said that attendance is so bad in Florida, but let's win and let's see what that does. Yeah. So we tried to win, but could not sustain it. And I know that Bruce Sherman wants to do that. And he's hoping this year's, last year they lost 95 games and they thought they were going to have a better year last year. Now they're saying they'll have a better year this year. It's going to be hard for them to win 75 games this year. Yeah. And they'll have to say that's a step forward. But at some point, it's going to be clear that this rebuild didn't work and they're going to start another rebuild. Yeah. And that's just how many teams have to do it. But it's hard in Florida. I think the mistake, if you actually think about it, expanding into Tampa and Miami was probably a mistake that Bud Selig did, because those franchises have struggled because people in Tampa and Miami, a lot of people are there for tax reasons and don't spend summers there because as you saw, it's unbearably hot and there's not a great corporate base in Miami. Yeah. So there's a lot of factors that hurt Miami, but listen, I hope that I want them. The irony is people misunderstand. I want them to win another World Series because I want to be mentioned as part of the greatness that is Miami, because I think that's cool, right? If the Marlins win another World Series right now, then they'll have won 3 World Series and I'll be associated with one of them, Dombrowski with one of them, and then Bruce Sherman with one of them. And I want them to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is still, like it has been in the past 10 years or so, there is promise. There's some good young guys coming up. So I will have to wait and see with the Marlins. But how about you? What are your future plans? What's coming up for you in the future? Anything different with your show? Any plans? Maybe getting back into baseball down the road? What are you thinking?
So I'm asked that a lot. Would I go back into team sports on the team side? And I've been there and I've done it, and I don't want to do that anymore. I love my show, Nothing Personal with David Sampson. It's right now a CBS podcast, but there's so many content platforms and providers who want the show. And I'm not saying I'm leaving CBS tomorrow, but I do know the show continues to grow. I love doing it. It's going to lead to other things, all of which I enjoy. And I love these opportunities. I would never have done this, right, as president of the Marlins. I love spending this hour with you and talking to fans, as frustrating as it can be sometimes. I try to talk to fans one at a time. I engage with them on Twitter and try to engage as much as I possibly can, given the amount of hours in the day. And I'm lucky. I'm enjoying my life. I'm healthy. I'm running marathons, and I am, I'm hopeful that I can continue to do what I do, and I don't take it for granted, because the only way I can do it is because of people like you, the audience who engages with me and with Nothing Personal. And I'm incredibly appreciative of getting a chance to sort of reinvent myself, because I'm not the president of the team anymore. I don't have to be the way I was. I can be totally different now, and I am, and so I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. And speaking of your show, everyone in the chat, Nothing Personal with David Sampson on CBS Sports. Download the podcast. Has a YouTube channel. Everyone, please go subscribe. It's good information. David, I want to thank you really so much. Absolute honor to be able to talk to someone that worked in baseball that won a World Series. This was the first time I ever talked to anyone like that. So I do appreciate the time, and I just want to thank you so much for coming on tonight. Thank you.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Have a great day. Thanks so much.
You too, man. Thank you again. Have a good rest of your night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All righty, everyone. So that is that. I do want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Absolute pleasure. Amazing opportunity to, have this conversation tonight. But I did see a couple of super chats. So I still see we have 230 people in the chat. Also, I'm not running the stream like normal. This is on StreamYard, so there's not any music or anything like that. But I'll hang out for a couple more minutes, do a Q&A in here. But we did have a couple of super chats here. Tyler Bernard, thank you so much for the $9.99. This is such a cool interview. Thank you, Robbie, for doing such great work. Hey, you were welcome, my friend. Thank you for coming out. And thanks to Mr. Sampson for being so candid about behind the scenes work in baseball. That's the coolest part, man. It's, just hearing those behind the scenes things, it's very interesting. I always want to be like a fly on the wall in those situations. But Tyler, thank you very much for the $9.99. What else we got? Dong Dre, what's going on? $2 super chat. I want to talk to Sam Sanson. Unfortunately, he's gone now, but man, what an opportunity here. Let's see. What else we got? What else we got here? What else we got here in the chat? Wow, quite a few of you already. Nicholas, Braves are going back to back, so going to be a while before the Marlins win. Hey, with the Marlins, man, could they maybe be a surprise team? They have added a couple of good players. I got to give them some credit. I do like some of the moves they made. Jorge Soler, Avisail Garcia, good young pitching. Who knows? Maybe they could take that step forward this year. They just need to have the right people in place to get this team to succeed. What else are any of you saying here? Let's see. Yeah, Dulcie Maris. This is primarily a Red Sox channel, so a little Jeter bashing. And I thought that was really interesting of what he said too, saying like, "Oh, do you actually think, Derek Jeter? Do you think he actually resigned? Do you think he stepped down? No, he got fired. We're not hearing that in the mainstream media. Just always remember, mainstream media. Hey, sometimes maybe take it with a grain of salt." I think that's very interesting. Who knows, what officially was going on behind the scenes, but, could that have been something? We'll have to wait and, maybe something will come out one day about that. What else we got here in the chat? What else we got here? Dongre Henderson, the Marlins are heading for last place. I mean, it's going to be a tough division, very tough division. Conforto, still a free agent. I would imagine probably not the Marlins. They were connected, but we'll have to wait and see. Could they add one more guy? I doubt it at this point, but
Mike Palumbo, what's going on? Lots of cool insider talk. Crazy to think if the Marlins get their stadium in '06, Cabrera has a chance to stay, changes the whole course of the team. It's very interesting, right? And I thought maybe that question, asking about Cabrera, like, was that tough? I know that might obviously come off as an easy question or an easy answer, but at the end of the day, it's like, man, like this is like your franchise star player, and just trading him away like that, you could really see with Dave where it still bothers him to this day, and you just wish things maybe would go differently for Miami. Who knows? Maybe if they had more fans, maybe if they got more revenue, could things be different for the Marlins? I don't know. We got another super chat here. Dongdre, what's going on, my friend? I want to talk to Samson, came from half baked. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. He has a part on his. Okay. I see what you're saying now. But yeah, I haven't seen that movie. I haven't seen it, but I have a couple of friends that talk about that movie. So what else we got here? Red Sox fans are delusional, say Dongdre Henderson. Yeah, we can be a little delusional. We can be. He brought up a good point too, because there are a lot of Red Sox fans out there where they really like to get on to John Henry. And when he asked that question, like, what do you think of John Henry? I've said, like, yeah, he's been fine, as an owner. But basically the way I looked at it was with John Henry, obviously I'm extremely thankful and very appreciative of all of the World Series championships. No other team has been able to do that besides the San Francisco Giants, win that much. When I was kind of obviously John Henry, to me, like, I am obviously very content with John Henry and the ownership group for the Red Sox, but there have been some down times, and of course that's going to come. But at the end of the day, the Red Sox have won 4 World Series, so I've had a lot of happy moments in the last 20 years. So what else we got here? Zachary Whitfield loved Josh Beckett. I loved Josh Beckett. I love that guy. In 2007, man, oh my God. He was a different Josh Beckett than what we had in 2006 when we first got him. That first year, a lot of people don't remember Josh Beckett. He was actually really bad that first year of the Red Sox, giving up a ton of home runs, but he was different in 2007. There was something different about him. Man, I still think to this day, that guy definitely had a chance to win that Cy Young that year. So I believe CC Sabathia won the Cy Young that year. I think CC won that year, right? I can't remember. What else we got here? Dongdre, if the Yankees don't win the World Series, Brian Cashman has got to go. I mean, you got to wonder, man, what is this Yankees team going to be like this year? But I thought that was really cool talking about the Yankees with David Samson, because it's obvious, they were, he was saying the Marlins, they were very confident. A lot of people forget, like, while that team was betted against a lot, that Marlins team was really good that year. They caught fire, when they were 19-31. So that was a really good Marlins team. But I think more people focus on the fact that, they had the Red Sox Yankees series that year, Pedro getting pulled, the Cubs, with Steve Bartman. It feels like a lot of that overshadows the Marlins World Series win that year. And that team was it was such a good team. It was such a good team. Nikki, did you watch David Samson on Survivor? I never really watched Survivor, but I might have to go take a look back at some old clips. So Walk Off Podcast, what's up, my friend? Who is the beast of the AL East? I mean, you got to say on paper right now the Blue Jays, right? You got to say the Blue Jays, but who knows? To me, I'm still going to lean Rays. Honestly, I know that might be the unpopular pick because the Blue Jays, they just look great. But to me, I'm still going to stick with the A's because that organization is just so well run. Everyone in the front office, all of the scouting, all of the coaches, they just do a great job. So to me personally, I'm going to lean towards the Rays still. I'm not ready to, I've turned my back on the Rays plenty of times, and I have been, I've definitely paid for it. They've made me look silly. So Dulcie Maris, what's going on? However you feel about the team's owner, be thankful your team isn't the Reds. Reds are my second favorite NL team, and it hurts so bad. And it is unfortunate for some of these smaller market teams, like the Reds, but it just goes to show if you're not bringing in the revenue, it's hard to get things done. But you know what? I got to at least give the Reds some credit. They could have traded away Luis Castillo. They could have traded away Tyler Mahle. They could have just gotten rid of everyone, and maybe you even trade away Joey Votto. They could have got, Jonathan India. imagine they would not even think about trading. But they have kept a lot of strong players in that organization, and they've brought in some younger talent. I think the Reds are going to be better than what people think. I don't think they're going to be a great team, but I don't think they're going to be like this bottom of the barrel team. When you got Luis Castillo atop that rotation, Tyler Mahle, it's not bad. And you brought in Mike Minor to be the number 3. Who knows? Maybe we're singing a different tune at the trade deadline. Maybe teams are going to keep, maybe push a little harder for someone like Luis Castillo. We'll have to wait and see. Will we be saying the same thing? Not quite sure. But I think the Reds have a chance to maybe be better than what people, think. Let's take a look here. Baseball Sports Talk. Love how he got triggered when you mentioned Jeff. Jeff Loria, his stepdad. I think that's who you meant. But yeah, it's been tough, man. I got to imagine, when you are the president, and when you're one of the top guys in the organization, listen, they made the moves. Yes, they had the fire sales, but they made moves. They did. You can't, that's one thing I think Marlins fans, they look so much at the fire sales, but they did make moves. 04, 05, those are disappointing Marlins teams. Those teams could have been really good. 05 in particular, Carlos Delgado, added him. That team should have been really good in 2005. But they did make the moves. They got the ballpark. They in 2012, bringing in Mark Burley, bringing in Jose Reyes, bringing in Heath Bell. They did make the moves to get it done, but it wasn't worth it, Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, you meant Jeff Passan. Oh, Baseball Sports Talk. Yeah, he did. He did get triggered at that one, man. Because it's true. People look at Jeff Passan like he's like a god because he has like the Passan bombs. You got to remember, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Jeff Passan, but that's what he is best at, is telling us who signs where. That's what it is. But when it comes to the inner, behind the walls, behind the scenes, Passan doesn't know anything. And he can sit here and, pretend like he does, but he really doesn't. He doesn't know really all the finer things that are going on behind the scenes, and I think, honestly, it showed when Dave said, he said it himself. Hey, come on to the show, come talk, have a conversation. And he didn't do it. So it's like, he offered the invite to go talk about it. Jeff Passan could have said his piece, but he didn't do it. So it is what it is. Like, he gave him the opportunity. He was friendly, and he didn't accept the invite. So, what can you do? And Dan Le Batard has invited Passan on too, and he won't go on. So, if Passan's not going to do it, then I don't know. So I don't know. But I do enjoy Passan for, breaking news, breaking the free agent signings and everything like that. So what else we got here? I'll take a couple of more before I get out of here. I was really excited for this interview tonight, and I've been preparing all day. I was preparing all day for this interview. I was looking at questions. I'm surprised I got through all the questions that I did, because he said he had to be out of here around like 9. We're a little over schedule of where he wanted to be, or when he wanted to leave. But I was actually a little worried, because he told me before we started, like, hey, about an hour, 9 o'clock, probably got to get out of here. So I'm glad he stayed, for the last few questions that I had. I was a little worried that I wasn't going to get them all answered. I had 20 questions overall. So we got it all in about an hour. So what else we got here? Let's see. Dongre, what's your take on the Yankees owner? I think they're just trying to spend smart, and I think they're just trying to. They're not trying to just do what the Mets are doing. They're trying not to do that. It's interesting, with this Yankees payroll and the team. Is it as good as it could be? I don't know. I mean, only time will tell what ends up happening with this Yankees team. So, let's see. Yeah, Zachary Goldstein, Passan was on Talking Baseball. But those guys, they're buddies. They're buddies. But Passan, he hasn't done, where Sampson, again, Passan came after him. Passan, he said some, he went after him on Twitter. But when Sampson said, hey, come on to the show. We can have a conversation about it. I can talk to you about it, and I can give you my side. And the fact that Passan doesn't do it, I mean, he can go on talking baseball all day because they're buddy buddies over there. So it is what it is. So Zachary, do I have any Red Sox tattoos? I do not. I do actually. I do. I have a Red Sox tattoo on my arm. I always forget that it's there. It's wow. I really just got caught in that because I always just think of like my sleeve that I have. It goes like all the way up my arm. But I always forget I have one right there, but maybe one day I'll show it. It's got it when I was like 16 years old, and might have to turn it into maybe some kind of a sleeve down the road. It's not my proudest tattoo, I'll say that. It's just the Red Sox logo. There's nothing crazy. So what else we got here? TK Passan should just stick to what he knows. He doesn't know how to run a. I mean, facts. So no disrespect, but he kind of needs to know his place, and his place is reporting for ESPN, So Matt Olson, fanboy, where do you think Conforto will go? I don't know. Where is he going to go? I have no idea. Where he's going to go. I still think the Rockies would be a really good fit. They could really use an upgrade over Tapia. We'll have to wait and see. Baseball sports talk, $4.99. People love Passan because he's funny with his insults. He is witty. I will say that about Passan. He is a witty guy, and I appreciate that. Even if you disagree with him, you have to admit, no, he is. He's a very witty guy, and I do appreciate that about him. I love wittiness in people. I like Passan. I do. I'm not trying to sit here and say, like he's like this terrible person. He's not. And I just think sometimes he can go a little far with some opinions, but hey, that's what he's paid to do at the end of the day. I disagree with some of the things he has to say, but I will admit he is a pretty funny guy. I will definitely say that about him. I agree with you. We had another super chat. Dondre Falcon. What do you think about the Braves offseason? Fantastic. Believe it or not, I actually just came out with my offseason grades. I think I maybe could have been a little too nice. And hey, what can I say? When I'm in a good mood, when I'm doing a video, especially giving out grades, hey, maybe I'm going to give some more A's than I planned on giving. If I were to look back at some of the grades I gave in the offseason or for the offseason, maybe I could have put the Angels at a B. I put the Angels at an A. I just really like what the Angels did, from a perspective where, because usually they're this team that's going after, these position players. I thought they were going to go get someone like Trevor Story, but they didn't. They really focused on pitching. That's what they needed. They added some starting pitching. They added bullpen guys. The Angels, I think, maybe overall, was it an A? No, but for their standards, for what they were trying to accomplish, I think they accomplished what they set out to do. And that's why I did give them an A. Could you argue a B? Sure. Could you even argue maybe the Marlins could have been an A? I had a comment like that today. I think the Marlins had themselves a pretty good offseason. Did they end up getting Nick Castellanos? No, but at least they did get Jorge Soler. I did like that move. So, but yeah, I definitely had some comments on that video saying, man, you give out A's like they're, like, what's the term? I can't think of the term, but basically I was giving out A's, like they were nothing. So, what can I say? I wasn't going crazy with it. Maybe I could have cut back on a couple, but, and maybe even the Dodgers, you could have said were a B. I had, while yes, they did add Freddie Freeman. That was really nice. They added more depth guys for the rotation, but overall, the fact that they did lose Corey Seager, Max Scherzer went to the Mets, the fact that they were able to bring in Freeman, who is a left-handed bat, who I think is going to give similar production with his bat than Corey Seager. Yes, Corey Seager's a shortstop, but hey, they already got Trey Turner there, so it's, yes, you're losing a shortstop in Corey Seager. That's a high value position. So, but you didn't need to address that. They brought in Freeman. In the end, it's going to be cheaper than what Corey Seager was, but that's the luxury of the fact that they got Turner in that trade with Scherzer. I remember when that trade happened, everyone was just thinking, Scherzer, that's it. But when Turner got added to the deal, it was like, whoa, Trey Turner. But and did they go after any, big starting pitching? No, because I don't think they really needed to. They're going to get Trevor Bauer back, and they must think that they're going to get him back, because if they didn't think that he was going to be coming back, I'm pretty sure they would have maybe went after a little harder after someone. But, we're, guys like Andrew Heaney, Tyler Anderson, who's the other one that they signed? Heaney, Anderson, bringing back Danny Duffy. Are those going to break down walls? No, but they could be, good depth pieces. They brought back Kershaw. So they added innings, at least with those guys like Anderson and Heaney. At least you're going to get some innings out of those guys. And with the Dodgers, they do pretty well with getting some guys back on track. So I think those could end up being pretty good signings. So I did give the Dodgers an A. Could you have maybe argued a B? Yeah, I could see an argument for a B for the Dodgers. And my Red Sox, could you have maybe I was showing a little bias, but I do like what the Red Sox did. If they had not done Trevor Story, if they had not gotten Story, I think it would have been, I think Story is huge because they really needed to improve defense. They needed a guy for second base. Sure, could you have gone with Christian Arroyo, maybe gotten an outfielder, something like that, and maybe had Kike Hernandez at second? Sure, you could have gone that route. But Trevor Story, the fact that how good his bat is going to fit at Fenway Park and the defense that he's going to provide at second base, that's a game changer right there. And he's going to only add to that offense. And he's not even going to be the centerpiece of the offense. He's just going to be there. And his bat's going to work really well. For Red Sox fans, the last time we had a second baseman of that caliber was Dustin Pedroia when he was healthy. I think Trevor Story can easily give as much production as Dustin Pedroia did during Pedroia's best years. Easily, I think Story could be that kind of a player. That is a guy where if you don't sign him, the Red Sox, for me, they go from an A to a C. That was huge for them. But I also liked that while they did not bring back Eduardo Rodriguez, I like that they kind of took the Dodgers approach, which, funny, Andrew Friedman, Chaim Bloom, both Rays guys, they both did similar things when it came to starting pitching. Look at what Friedman did. Duffy, Heaney, Tyler Anderson. Look at what Chaim Bloom did, adding Paxton, Waka, Rich Hill. Very similar mentalities right there behind those moves. I don't think that should come as a surprise because those guys operate because they're thinking, all right, how do we replace, because they're thinking with Scherzer, right? How do we replace Scherzer in this rotation, right? Well, let's try and attack it with three different guys. Same thing with Bloom. They lost Eduardo Rodriguez. Let's attack, instead of just trying to go for one guy, let's go with three cheaper options and let's just try and get as much out of those guys as you can. Moneyball approach. Look at the A's. That's very similar to what they did back in the day. So overall, as for the Braves, Andre, yeah, fantastic. They had a great offseason, man. Honestly, I think they did better. I think adding Olsen was better than Freeman because they traded for him. They gave up some pretty good prospects. That's what it's going to cost for someone like him. But I mean, man, that bullpen's looking serious. Man, that's going to be a really good Braves team. But everyone, I think I am going to get out of here. This was it was an honor to talk to someone like David Samson, an absolute honor. Sure, I know people are going to have their different opinions about him, but at the end of the day, someone that worked in a front office, at the top for a long time, and hey, helped win a World Series in 2003, made moves to get to that World Series championship, and sure, yeah, there were some players before, but hey, David Samson and the group that they had there, they really did do a lot. And sure, a lot of things didn't work out. And David Samson's going to be the first one to tell you, hey, I didn't do a lot of stuff, as good as I could have done. I could have done things differently. He has regrets. And, to me, the fact that he was there for that long, and they did make a lot of improvements there. And I know that maybe that might be hard to see because obviously the Marlins have had a lot of losing seasons and fire sales and whatnot. But at the end of the day, though, it was just an honor, to be able to talk to him. That's really cool. The fact that I could have a conversation with someone like that. And, but everyone, I'm going to get out of here. If you are, just coming in, hey, go back to the beginning. It was a great conversation. But everyone, I want to thank you for coming out tonight. We also actually had one more super chat. Dongdre, thank you so much again. Trevor will be lucky to see the field this year, just from what we know he did. I just don't see MLB letting him take the field. I got to disagree. I think he is going to take the field. He was acquitted on everything. It was thrown out. I do think he is going to get a suspension. I do think they will, because they have done that in the past. At the end of the day, the guy was proven innocent. They threw out the whole thing. There was nothing there. Yeah, I do think we will see him eventually. I think the latest we'll see him, June. I don't think it's going to be very long before we see him. Hey, Joe Cronin, what's going on, man? How you doing, man? Hope you're ready for WrestleMania, man. Joe, if you're still there, I died at Kevin Owens yesterday. Just the way he just looked bald, it absolutely killed me. I was dying. Like, thank God that, without that who knows how that show would have gone. But good grief. I just couldn't, just the way he looked like, he looked like a poor man Stone Cold. He just looked hilarious. Thank God for Kevin Owens. But at WrestleMania, we're gonna have to wait and see how that goes. Whatever. I'm always excited for WrestleMania every year. It could be, 34 was one of the worst of all time, but I was so hyped for that. And same thing this year. At the end of the day, I'm excited to see Stone Cold. So, but yeah, maybe The Rock too. That would be pretty cool. But Joe, man, keep doing your thing, man. I'm always watching, man. So thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight, man. But everyone, I'm going to get out of here. I'm tired. I got to teach kids in the morning. I'm dead. So have yourself a good night, and I'll talk to you next time.